Talk to me. Rozmowy, wywiady, podcasty. Zapraszam, Joanna Chmura.
Yes.
So hello and welcome. And welcome to the next episode of Talk to Me podcast that I am so excited about. Before I switch back to English, I'm going to switch to Polish so that the Polish viewers and listeners, because it's going to be in audio as well, know what it's all about. Cześć, witajcie. Dzisiaj najwspanialszy poniedziałkowy dzień i początek tygodnia, bo mam przed sobą i przed wami, a właściwie dla was, wspaniałego gościa, Amir Levine, który jest autorem książek, które zmieniają świat. I jedną z tych książek już znacie, nazywa się Attached i była kilka lat temu super po prostu bestsellerem, który do tej pory utrzymuje się po prostu w rankingach bardzo wysoko, dlatego że jest po prostu świetną książką, a niedawno swoją premierę miała książka z angielskiego, tytuł brzmi Secure po naszemu, po polsku Bezpiecznie i też jest o stylach przywiązania, o których dzisiaj będziemy rozmawiać, więc możecie wytrzymać z kupowaniem tej książki do końca tej rozmowy, a potem kupić albo audiobooka, albo właśnie twardą tutaj taką analogową wersję do czytania dla tych z was, które lubią jeszcze w ten sposób eksplorować różne tajniki ludzkiej psychiki, o której będziemy mówić, o której mówi ta książka. So Amir, all I said was that all of your books are amazing and that you are amazing. And I just told them that until we finish, let them focus on us and the conversation, and then they can go and buy all the books and all the things that you've enriched the psychology with. So welcome to Poland in a way.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here, and thank you for all the kind words. I really appreciate it. You could have said anything.
I was kind. I was kind.
I wish I spoke Polish, but
maybe next time.
Yes, exactly.
Have you ever been in Poland?
I've never been to Poland, but I really want to go a lot because I heard Warsaw is amazing, and there's a very sort of like young energy to it now. It's very happening, so I'm very curious to go.
Yeah. So at any time you decide to, just let us know, and we'll prepare, all the sightseeing things, but also anything that you would like to see in Poland. You're very welcome to, and we're gonna show you around. So let us know.
Thank you.
The reason for having this conversation is the magnificent thing that you've accomplished, and this is me as a psychologist, but also as a person who's been in relationships for several times. The magnificent thing you've accomplished was giving the world a book, and actually now 2 books, that try to explain what happens between 2 people. What happens when they decide to go hand in hand. And I'm not only talking about romantic relationships, but also the relationships between parents and children and friends and colleagues. So thank you for that in advance, for giving the world something to understand ourselves a little bit better. But if you could go back in time and tell me the very first moment you thought, oh, this is a great thing actually to translate into a book. Do you remember that moment, and what was it like?
Yes, I remember it exactly. Actually, I get goosebumps just you asking me that because it was very, very personal moment for me. I'm going to start crying just thinking about it now because I've written about it recently, so it's all really more fresh in my mind. I was doing I first did adult psychiatry residency, and then I did my child and adolescent psychiatry residency. And I was working with with mothers who were trauma survivors and their toddlers in something that's called the Therapeutic Nursery at Columbia. And we were helping them create a more secure bond with their child. Because when you have PTSD, if the child drops something or they scream, which children do, the mothers, because of the symptoms, would sort of back away, would kind of like shut down. And that, if we understand attachment logic, and we can see, translates to all of our relationships later on too. Like the withdrawal elicits like an attachment activation. It's like, and they would even escalate. And so we worked with them to help them understand what a secure bond is, to help them really realize a lot of the things that I now mentioned and the tools that I mentioned in Secure. You can see some echo of that from that particular treatment. How to create the back and forth which we have all the time when attachment is basically a kind of like a back and forth, an energy that flows back and forth between us, how to preserve that in that bond. And the therapy was so effective and so amazing that I did something I've never done before. They give you a recommended reading list that no one has time to read. I was a busy resident and you run around. I read everything on that list, including like 2 huge textbooks about adult attachment and the adult attachment styles that I've never learned about in my clinical training because it wasn't part of the clinical training. It was buried in scientific social psychology research. And I was going through a breakup at the time. And then understanding about these different attachment styles, it was like a relationship light bulb went up in my head. It's like a game changer for me. So I had my own experience. I've experienced it myself. All of a sudden, I understood because I knew that the person that I was with, that we both loved each other, but it still wasn't working out, and I didn't understand why. And all of a sudden, it made really so much more sense because like they
Yeah.
were avoidant, and I'm like, and it was just like really made a lot of sense. Like not always. It really explains why love doesn't conquer all, and why people can really love each other and still for it not to work out. So it gave a language to that.
Did it help anyhow with the ache, with the heartache?
Oh, good question. No. I mean, no, I would say it did help a little bit because it gave me a language to make sense of it, but it was really, really difficult breakup. And at the time, I didn't have the tools that I have now in Secure. So I didn't really know how to manage it. I understood the attachment styles, but I didn't know what to tell the other person. I didn't know what to tell myself. I didn't have the strategies to sort of like walk me around those different attachment styles and to become more secure. So at the time, it didn't help. And I remember, we used to hang out a lot on the east side. I was living in Chelsea and they were living in the East Village, and I would ride my bike. And for like 6 months, I couldn't cross Fifth Avenue, which is like I couldn't go to the east side of Manhattan because everything reminded me of the time we were together and everything. And like it was just so painful. And now looking back, 20 like 17 years later, I have more tools of how I know there's so many things that I wouldn't have that I now would know to do completely differently, and I have done it differently because you mentioned that you've been in several relationships, and so have I.
Yeah.
And using the tools in this new book, Insecure, I've definitely upgraded my game personally.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for sharing, first of all, and bringing in the topic that I guess it's everybody's experience. Because I don't want to give a number to the level of heartache during a breakup, but I guess it's so hard to decide to leave somebody when you know you love them and they love you, but it still doesn't work. I think if there's a reason, like you can pinpoint, like this is the reason why we have to break up, gone. I think maybe it's a little bit easier for the mind because, as you said, it's you love this person, you want to be together, but it's just there's something in between. So I totally get the heartache. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, yeah. And I think now that's the beauty of it. And it took me like like more than 10 years to sort of come up with an idea of how to actually find solution to them, some of these often very frequent pitfalls that people fall into. A lot of the time, it's a clash between people who have an avoidant attachment style and
Yes.
people who have other attachment style or anxious attachment style more. And we can go into the attachment styles. But now in this new book, I have really very specific tools that people can use, like tools for avoidance, tools for anxious, tools for all of us to really understand, but also not only in romantic relationships, because there's also, I can personally tell you that there's also heartaches when friendships don't work out. And then and there's an, just a whole myriad of different relationships with family and family members and distant family and bosses and where we work. We have relationships. We're very, very social species. We have a lot of relationships with many, many different people. And the idea behind Secure, it's kind of like coming up with almost like a unified theory of how to be more secure in all of these relationships.
Yes. Yes, and that was when I was going through and reading Secure. I was first of all grateful again for writing such a great book, but second of all for the tips that we're going to go into in a couple of minutes, but also the idea of sort of the influence everyone has on creating the environment that could be sustaining for whatever attachment style you have. So it was sort of empowering, and I was so grateful seeing that. Because it's sort of halfway through if we describe the problem, but the second half is okay. How do we manage the things that the traps that we fall into in relationships? So thank you so much for sharing that, and we're going to go into that in a second, as I said. But the second thing you did in this book, and I was just like, oh my god, somebody finally said it, that each of those styles has superpowers, which was just mind blowing for me because I used to be taught at school and uni, for example, that it's sort of like the defect, like you have this wound, you have this wound, like it's all about trying to figure out the pathology of it. And you said there's a downside, but there's an upside of each of these styles. If you could just say a few things about that, that would be
Oh
great.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I really like that a lot too. I mean, that's part of the reason why I like this whole attachment framework because it's not based in the medical clinical model. It comes from a completely different place of basically, it's a variation on a norm. These attachment styles are not pathological. And the question is also different. Like when you come from the clinical medical model, it's like initially with Freud and it's like, what's a pathology and how do you cure it? How do you fix it? Here, it's not about that at all. It's more, is it effective or ineffective? Or in other words, like in more like, is it working for you or it's not working for you? And if it's not working for you, how do you fix it? But then there's also the other side of it, also that when you look at things, and that's what I started to do more and more in secure priming therapy because I actually became a neuroscience research after I finished my clinical training. So all of a sudden, it gave me a whole different way of looking at our behaviors, at our brain, because I looked at it from the point of view of the brain and the science. And it was so empowering because it really gives you an idea that we all experience the world slightly differently, and we all have like some very unique powers or abilities, but we really have to find the right environment for it to get expressed. And I really go into great length in the book trying to explain that. But I mean, I can give you a few examples. There's one study that I have to tell you about, which is the study. It's like a brilliant. I don't know who did it. It's just so brilliant. I mean, and now I can't remember the name, but it's in the book. They set up a group of people in a room, and then they had a little bit of smoke coming out of the of one of the computers, and it was the people with the anxious attachment style that noticed the smoke first and alerted everyone. But it was the people who had the avoidant attachment style that were first out the door. They weren't like, "Oh, should we go? Should we not go? Are you coming?" They were like,
I'm
I'm out
gone.
of here. And then other people followed. So it shows you how in certain circumstances, having these different variation of a norm, like having that sensitivity, being able to see things in the environment that other people can't see can be a huge asset. And you can be the canary in the coal mine, but then also having the people who are self-motivated, who don't need input from others, who work on their own, is also hugely advantageous for us as a group. So really understanding that is really crucial for then the next step that you need to take. So it's not about, oh, I need to fix myself, or it's because of like early wounds that I'm like that. It's actually more about, okay, I have a certain biology. How do I make it work for me?
Yeah, yeah. So going back to the basics, the one, two, threes, what is the attachment style and how does it apply to the adult's life, and how does it affect us when we are little children?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the attachment styles, they were discovered by Mary Ainsworth in the strange situation test, where they had like a toddler come in with their caregiver, their mother usually, and to a room full of toys and they start playing with the toys, and then they ask the mother to leave. And you can see it on YouTube. The moment the mother leaves, they drop everything and they rush to the door, start banging, crying, like really like miserable, horrible. You
It's
try to
hard.
give them a toy. I know. You try to give them a toy, they'll throw it in your face. They couldn't care less. And then they ask the mother to come back. And it's in that moment of the reunion where Mary Ainsworth discovered these three attachment style: anxious, avoidant, and secure. And it all had to do with how quickly the child was able to calm down and re-engage with the world around them. So secure, it's remarkable. All like the minute the caregiver picks them up, they calm down very, very quickly. And then they start pointing and wanting to play with toys. The anxious, not so much. It takes a long time to calm them down. And they're not that interested in the environment. It's like, you did something horrible to me. I'm not going to forget it. And then the avoidant, sometimes they can stay even limp in their mother's arms. So they're not crying, but if you actually, when they tested them, their blood pressure is through the roof, but they still can't, they're not good at using the bond to regulate their emotions and affect. So it's all about how effective, you remember that what's working, what's not, how effective is the bond in regulating our emotions. And that is something that we also have as adults also, because we are extremely social species. And the way that we actually calm down and the way that we deal with problems, most of us, except for avoidance, is so maybe avoidance are maybe 25% of the population. So 75% of us like is through other people. So I guarantee you that we have an attachment hierarchy in our head, and there, if something bad happened to you, you know exactly who you're going to go to: person one, person two, person three, and maybe for different things you go to different
Yes.
people, because we're socially savvy, and that's another important point that we'll mention later. And so we have this idea, and if we're securely attached to them, it sometimes it just takes like a word, a single word, a sentence, a hug can make us feel better right away. But if we're insecurely attached, it can also be like a huge instigator of emotional distress. So really, attachment is the basis of both suffering and healing from suffering. And these attachment styles, the anxious, avoidant, secure, and I'll explain in a minute how it translates to adulthood, they really dictate how we handle that sort of like the back and forth with other people.
That is just amazing, listening to you, but also having the immediately I go back in my personal history, but also to the history of the people that I work with. It's just amazing I wish I had that knowledge like 20 something years ago, because that would explain, for example, for so many relationships that didn't work out, but also it would help me navigate the new relationship that I was creating. So again, thank you for applying that into not only into explaining how it's created in the early stages of our lives, but also how how is it applied to the the adult
To
relationships
us
that
as an
we're in.
adults, because we don't think about our relationships as something that
No.
is there to regulate our emotions. We think we have to regulate our own emotions, but that's not our biology. And that's not what we do usually. If something bad happens to us, usually we reach out to other people. But many people don't want to accept that, yes, that we're social species. That's how we regulate our emotions, is through other people. Except for avoidants who are not very good at doing that. Um, but and that's what also gets them into trouble. But I think that here's where it gets interesting. So oftentimes people think that, oh, the attachment style that I have as a child is what I'm going to have as an adult. But the research doesn't show that at all. In fact, it shows something quite the opposite. It shows that our attachment styles that we have with our parents, with our mom, carries very, very small effect on our attachment style as adults. In one study, actually one recent study, they show that only 3%, just 3% of the variance of our adult attachment style is related to our our attachment style in with our mom, and actually it showed that friendship early on actually had a greater effect on our adult attachment style. Like it had like 11%. Both are not huge
Wow.
effects, but like
Yeah.
so it's much more nuanced and complex than people think. And attachment styles can change throughout our lifetime and morph, which I think is a good news because we can change to become more secure. That's the whole point of the new book, Secure, is how to change to become more secure. And also, there's this thing that we can have different attachment styles with different people. And I have on my website, I have a questionnaire. I call it attachment topography. And you can fill out, I have a whole list. You can even fill out your attachment style with your pet, with your boss, with your colleague, different, and then you can get a map and see the spread of your attachment styles. And that actually, we use that map in secure priming therapy as a baseline to what are we going to do to work from here? How are we going to shape your environment to help you become more secure? So we use the fact that we can change, and then you can assess your different attachment styles.
Yeah, that is amazing, and that was mind blowing to me actually, because when you name the statistics for 3% and 11%, which is like 3 times more with friendships than the motherhood, I was like, oh, we're gonna give mothers a break finally. Like we're gonna
I know, it's like the whole
not
blame
blame them
game.
all the time. Exactly.
But you know, the interesting
Exactly.
thing, it doesn't only give mothers a break. I mean, yeah, it does give mothers a break, but it also it goes both ways. I find in my practice, it also helps take the pressure off parents because parents think like, oh my god, like every little thing that they do, they're going to scar the child for life. That it's like because we have this deterministic idea, sort of like a Freudian remnant in our culture, that every little thing that you'll do, that this is the most important relationship, and so that's a lot of responsibility. Every little, and we know how like hard parenting is. It cannot be done perfectly. It's just not something that can be done perfectly. It's just like such a hard job, and that's also related to the human brain because we're very brain centric growing up. So it can't be done perfectly. So that also gives permission to parents to relax a little bit in their parenting, and I think that actually helps kids become more secure when you don't think that everything is crucial or so deterministic.
Yeah, yeah. I also applaud the way you, because you're multi-talented and you have this perspective, neuroscience, but also clinical psychology, and also your own experiences, which I always admire when the scientist brings in his own or her own personal stories, because it seems to me like we're all in it together and not like the person that has the knowledge and just explains to the rest of us like you should be living like that. So thank you for sharing your own stories as well. But the way you bring in the neuroscience into the book, and also I had a privilege of going through the Polish translation before it goes into the world, and for some reason, in the very first, for the very first time, I guess, I sort of felt like I understand how it works. So was it hard for you to translate the complexity of the neuroscience into the simplifying it so that everyone could understand it?
I'm so glad you're asking me that. You're actually, it's really, I'm moved because like it was really hard. It was hard because, and it took me maybe 4 or 5 years writing this book. Um,
Mm.
I started writing it after my dad died from COVID.
Mm.
And I never really thought about writing a book. I was busy in the lab, but COVID gave me a little bit of a break. And then it was just so hard managing all of that and the whole social breakdown and everything that's happened. And then I realized it's basically I came up. It's a new type of therapy that I've developed in my practice over the years to help people become more secure. I didn't even realize that I was developing something new. I just found myself explaining patients more and more about the brain and how the brain works. And I saw that it was really helping them understand things really on a basic level. Like, why are we so? And it also changes some of the language. Like, instead of saying, like, I wasn't invited to a work meeting and it bothers me.
Mhm.
So I used to say, "Oh, I shouldn't let it get to me." So what? So it's just one meeting. Why am I responding to so much? Like, let it go. I would say to myself, "Let it go, Amir. Like, don't make such a big deal out of it." How many times we all say these things, but that's why, like in chapter 1 of the book, I talk about the cyberball effect and how it's programmed inside us, and I explain why also to actually be
Yeah.
super sensitive to exclusion, And so I've changed the whole narrative in my head, and then I told my patients, and in my patients and my students changed to understand. No, this is the cyberball effect. When I'm excluded, the pain registers that is very the brain registers that is hugely painful and distressing, and it elicits self scrutiny. What have I done wrong? What, like all it sort of brings up all that stuff online and make you and it hurts. So that's one example of how understanding how a brain works um, really changes even the conversation that I have in my own head inside and how I relate to the world around me.
Yeah.
But it took a long
Yeah.
time to translate it.
I was going through this chapter and I was like, oh my God, I finally get it. Why am I, the moment something happens, I feel excluded. I simply cannot let go. I simply, dwell on it and stay in this moment. And even though my mind says, okay, Joanna, this is not what you think. This is the story you're making up. But it feels like the process already started. And I cannot stop it. Like it's like a snowball effect. And the way you explained how it works in how actually works, that it's really hard to make it stop, and it requires a lot of effort and self-consciousness, just gave me a little bit of like, okay, it's okay, it's normal, it's just the way your brain or everybody's brain works. It's fine. So not only you did something that I think is really, really difficult, translating the complexity of the language into something we can understand, but also the translation is going to give people, for sure, myself included, a sense of relief that it's not only in my hands. It's all the things, the processes that are happening inside of me, over which I can have some sort of influence, but it's sort of encrypted in me, and it's not only my fault or that I can that there's something a little bit bigger than myself. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but
No, it
I
totally.
just
You're
want to.
describing exactly my experience and why I also wrote about like the cyberball effect, which basically is when you get excluded. And they did this study where you play a game of catch, like a simple a game, and then all of a sudden with two other people, and then they stop throwing the ball in your direction. And what they saw is that areas of like painful distress and self scrutiny go online in our brain, but also psychologically, it affects our self esteem, our like how much we feel we have control over our lives, and how much we feel that life is meaningful. So these are things that I never thought have anything to do with how connected I feel to others, and that can be broken so easily by someone sort of like not inviting me to like a dinner party, or not like even not including me in their work call. I never
Yeah.
thought that it has such a profound psychological effect, like how much life is meaningful, how much of control I am in my life, or my self esteem. But then discovering that also led me to think about creating an antidote to that exclusion, and sort of to create what I've come to call the 5 pillars of a secure life, because they also have the opposite experiment. I love these. So I love science because people come up with the most amazing ideas, like the smoke that comes out of the computer. So here, so there's that game of catch when you're standing and playing with two others, and all of a sudden they're not throwing a ball in your direction. They did something that's called the reverse cyberball. So the reverse cyberball, and there's a little diagram in the book. Um, you are standing in the middle, and then and then two others are standing on each side, and then you throw the ball to one person, they throw it to you, and then you turn around, you throw it to the other person, they throw it to you. So you're in the middle, you're hyper included. They're not excluded because it goes through you, but you're hyper included, and that creates the opposite. The brain loves that. It creates that you feel that life is more meaningful, more self-esteem, more sense of control over your life, which is so important nowadays because of like geopolitical events that feel so insane. To feel more in control of your life. So all of these really things happen from something very small. So then I realized that I really thought hard how to create that hyper inclusive like scenario in our everyday life. And that's when I came up with this, like something that's called CARP, basically.
Yeah, could you tell a little bit more about that? Because that's the second half of the book when you explain how you can create an environment that actually can be helpful, whatever style you're introducing to the world. So thank you
Yeah, like I
again.
call
Thank
it
you
like
for doing that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. You create like a secure village. I call it secure village, or
yeah,
basically that idea of hyper inclusiveness with all of the benefits. By the way, before even going to that, it's like it's so important to understand. It's not just a psychological benefit. The benefit is hugely also for our health and longevity. Like people are so obsessed with longevity now, and I don't know, even Poland, I'm sure everywhere, we take
yeah,
supplements, cold
yeah.
plunges, exosomes, peptides. Like here in the States, it's insane. It's like multi-billion dollar industry. But a lot of these things are not even proven to really increase it's like longevity and help with health. A lot of it is bogus or very,
Yeah.
very weak evidence. But you find that being hyper included or that feeling being connected has immense health benefit. I think I quote one study where we looked at, and it's really good science also, not just here and there one paper about one supplement. It shows, like, I think it followed 300,000 people in a meta-analysis, and it showed 50% reduction in mortality for people who feel more connected.
Mm.
It showed also, not only it showed in another study that actually came out in 2026, they showed that if you have like they call it a hassler, like these people who are like insecure in your life, that you have all this the cyberball effect and all these effects that make you upset. Uh, each hassler can reduce your biological age by 9 months. So they can
Oh
they
no.
can age you faster.
No.
And it's cumulative. So, and the more hustlers you have, the
Oh, let me
faster
think.
you're aging. So if people think about their skin health, think also about your like the hustlers in your life. And so I really wanted to create a simple tool that people can use to create a more hyper included life. And so I came up with these 5 pillars, and it starts. You have to learn to be consistent, available, and responsive. But it's not enough in a relationship that I tell you, oh, I feel that I'm very consistent, available, and responsive with Jonna. I'm great. No, no, it's a two-factor authentication. I have to reach out to you, and I have to say, I have to make sure that you experience me as reliable and predictable. So these are the 5 CARP: consistent, available, responsive, but also the other person has to experience you as reliable and predictable. So if you learn to be CARP, and if you can teach other people around you to be CARP with you, then you really done an incredible job in becoming more secure. Because people think attachment is very complicated, that they have to have long conversations with other people, that they have to invest a lot of energy in a lot of people. But that's not how attachment works. Attachment is like a safety radar. It's how we feel safe in the world. And it's like in the strange situation test, when the child plays with all the toys, every once in a while it looks back to see if the mom is there. And if the mom is there, then he doesn't care about her. He doesn't think about her all the time. So he plays along. The carp thing is like those little moments of like checking, like the child does, to keep us feeling connected, so we can put the relationship in the background and engage. We don't play with toys, but we work. Like here, we're talking in this podcast. We parent. We have hobbies. We have friends. So that's our form of exploration as adults.
Yeah. Yeah, when you were describing carp in the book, it was just eye opening. But even more so was with the simi. So seemingly insignificant minor interactions, which was for me because I think I became a psychologist so that I could have all the meaningful and deep conversations with
Me too.
and make it like my everyday life. Like just I want to be paid for that because it's just awesome. Like this is the best thing in the world. But that has a downside because I neglected all the short and sweet and non-significant conversations. So going through your book, I was like reframed that the the sort of the insignificant ones are also significant. And just
Yes.
thank you for enriching my relationships and all the voice memos that I leave right now, or the short the text messages that I leave. So I think thanks to you and understanding how important it is in making myself, but also others, feel secure. I sort of looked at it as a gold, I guess.
Oh my, again, so we're right. You really, really understood it. Like, I'm so glad because, like, you write a book and you don't know how people will
I know.
perceive it, but you really, and I'm glad because also you're a psychologist and you know the pool of like going into the childhood and looking into that, and there's room for that. I'm not saying there isn't, and I even write why it's actually really helpful, I think, but we don't think about change as coming from these little moments, the day-to-day moments, that what I call the seemingly insignificant minor interactions, which also seemies, that are happening in our day-to-day life. But and I only discovered it once I became a neuroscientist, and I really worked and I did experiments and looking how the brain changes, like with animals. I looked at like aplesia in mice, and just seeing how if you immerse yourself in an enriched, in a secure, enriched environment, then your brain really changes on a structural level. Like it's a very, very deep change. So but how do you create those that immersive, secure environments? And that's why I came up with this idea. Yes, it's made up by each and little interaction that we have, both with our significant, like people that are close to us, but also our wider circle. And I give an example, I think, in the book, of this woman that moves after her husband dies. She moves to a new to a new town, but in that town, everybody says hello. Like in the beginning, she was looking back to see, are they like trying to say hello to someone
Yeah.
behind her? It's like, what's going on? She
Yeah.
kind of like, but then she all of a sudden realized, wow, this is how it is here. People are more like acknowledging each other. And I really helped her like with her grief and like feel
Yeah.
sort of like more like it really helped her heal. So
Yeah.
I also have changed dramatically how I interact with people around me based on that. I feel like it's like a little coins of gold. If it were like a video
Yes.
games, for me to like a
Yes.
Pac-Man
Yes.
to kind of
Yes.
like get
And
throughout
you
my
get
day.
after 10, you get a new life. Like you have one extra life to live.
The other day, I was flying from LA to New York, and I we have something that's called Trader Joe's here. Like it's a really nice supermarket, and I went
Yeah.
and they have these like three bars in one package, three chocolate bars, and I bought something for the flight because like the only thing that gets me through long flights is like something to eat. Like so, I bought these bars of chocolate, but I specifically bought the ones that come three in a box. They're small. And then when I was sitting, I handed each and one to the people next to me.
Aw.
No, just because again, it's like I use that as like this neural gold of finding ways, like little moments of connection that really help me, like like that whole thing of sense of control and that life is more meaningful and the self-esteem. So it helps me. And like I mentioned to you, especially feeling I want to feel more in control because there's so many things that are outside of my control. So it's but it also means I'm more cognizant. Like if I call, something happened, like with the airline. So when I call, I really think about talking to the person on the other line and being like nicer to them and connecting to them because it's not their fault oftentimes what happened. And like I've really made it a point to even say hello to people in the elevator, like just like small gestures like that.
And actually, the same with me. Because one thing is enriching your regular relationship, friendships, family, and romantic ones with the small stuff. But I started doing it with the people that I don't know on the street, in the parking lot, or in the elevator, which is quite an effort for me because I'm naturally introverted. So it's quite a
Yes,
thing
same
to
here.
actually open up. But I keep on reminding myself of what you wrote in the book, and especially with the polarization across the globe, and pointing out that we are so different and we are so, on two other sides fighting with each other. I think the way back is just reminding ourselves that all of us love chocolate on the plane.
Right.
Like we're,
Exactly. Our
we're,
shared
we're still
humanity.
pretty much the same. Exactly.
Yes, I know
Exactly.
exactly. It's so important, and that so I can't really change global events, but I can do what I can do in my little my little sort of habitat of like the best. I even started talking more to Uber drivers. I used to just sit in the back and kind of like I don't want to talk to anyone. No, but I started talking to Uber drivers
Yeah.
more. I think even the other
Yeah.
day he was like in LA and he was from Armenia and he barely spoke English. A young guy, I think he was like 23. And he said, no, I have a problem. I don't speak English. I need to learn English. So I told him, oh, you can use ChatGPT while you're driving. But he didn't know how to use the voice chat with ChatGPT. So while there, like I helped him, I showed him how to download the ChatGPT app and how to use the voice
Oh,
commands. And then he started talking to it in English and he started teaching it English. So you make little contributions like that and it does feel more meaningful.
it does. It does, and it brings back the idea that we're pretty much the same. If you take all the layers of the education, or the way the place you were born in, or the societal things, if you take the layers off, we're pretty much the same. We want to be accepted. We want to be loved. We want to feel secure, and I think we forget about it. I think we focus on the differences too much, and not enough on the things that are pretty much the same for all of us, which your book is a great reminder of.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I have a weird question, because I asked my friends what would they ask you if you had the privilege I have of talking to you, and they said there's a question about being unfaithful. Are there any research showing that avoidant or anxious is more prone to being unfaithful?
I think in general, there is research. It's really interesting. There's research. So I think both anxious, you can also lump like anxious and avoidant and fearful avoidant. You can lump them together to insecure. So I think
Right.
in general, I think anyone can, in certain circumstances, something can happen. But I do think some of the research shows that people with insecure attachment styles have more, I think, can be more prone to being unfaithful and it's from two different mechanisms. So there is research that actually shows that avoidants tend to have a wandering eye and also like be more open to looking at other people while in a relationship. And I think because they want to minimize closeness, avoidants don't feel too comfortable with too much closeness in a relationship. And then they use the activating strategies to minimize closeness. So one of the ways to minimize closeness is to notice other people more. And anxious, I think, they feel so unsettled in relationships and worry a lot about the intactness of their relationship. So sometimes as a way of coping with it, they would find a distraction on the outside or something to sort of give them a boost to their self-esteem, and so they also may do it because of that. It's a way to cope with some uneasiness in their relationship. And actually, there is research that shows that people who are secure, when they had people rate the attractiveness of other people. They just they don't even look at other people. And if they do, they rate them as less attractive.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so it's almost like they don't even
Amazing.
see other people so much
Yeah.
anymore. They're kind of like
Yeah.
they're like in their little cocoon of their own, and they don't really think about it that much. So there is
Yeah.
something to be said about becoming more secure, but there's also additional research that people think, oh, people are secure or boring and carp, you're always there, you always show up for people. But there's actually research that shows that in romantic relationships, when a partner experiences the other person is more responsive and available, that it actually increases sexual desire. That actually
Mm.
carp, people think, oh, it actually is sexy. There's a whole body of research around that. So that made me happy because I think it's such a people tend to think that the drama in your relationship is what drives the spark, but that's actually
Yeah.
not true.
That's first of all good to know, and second of all, that's sort of counterintuitive for some people, because some of us are in search for the the sparks, actually, that's the best word to describe it, and try to find them in different places with different people, thinking that this is what the whole relationship thing is what it's for. All the hype and all the excitement, but it's just like it's just imagination, thinking that I'm going to find it there, because I'm not. Like, once the spark is over, there's going to be another spark that I'm going to be in search of. Whereas you're saying, with the secure relationship and the secure attachment that we create within a couple, there's space for fire, not only sparks, but for fire, I guess.
And I think there's another big misconception, and I talk about it. I also have, I don't know, I don't think if people would watch it in Poland, with something that's called Masterclass. It's here in the US. They have like different
Yes.
people give classes on different things.
Yes.
It's online. But I have a masterclass that's launching on May 7th. And in it, there's one, I give 3 cases. There's different, like I give a little, like there's an example from, you can see attachment behavior everywhere. So there, I give an example of something from Seinfeld, sort of a classic, but also give cases. And one of the cases is this couple who have 2 young children, and they're like constantly, like, you have 2 young children, you're working around the clock, but then the woman goes to the park and her friends tells her, oh, we make it a point to get a babysitter like once every few months and go on a trip without our kids to keep the spark going. She goes back and she tells her husband, do you think we don't have a spark anymore? And he says, no, I think everything is fine. I love you. And like, we're like, but then he gets into her head, oh, something is wrong in our relationship. We need the spark. So they go off on the cruise on the weekend. But when they're on the cruise, they can't really, they're not really enjoying themselves. They're stressed out. They don't know if the babysitter is okay. They constantly look at the camera to see if the babies are fine. They come home missing their kids a lot. And they come home exhausted from that emotional thing of being away from their kids. And they're like, no, we were fine. We were very happy. We don't need to keep the spark by going away because it's just too stressful. And then so from an attachment perspective, what we have to understand that a good, secure relationship actually puts the relationship in the background. Like, we don't think about the relationship a lot. Here, moments here and there, we can make specific moments to make it more, like, to make it special. But most of the time, it's not in the forefront of our mind. It's the same way that the child is playing with the toys. You don't want him to sort of look at the mom all the time and hold the mom's hand all the time. Then the relationship, it's not serving its function. The function of a relationship is to enable your exploration so you can put it behind you. It's that calmness. So that's the misconception that oftentimes happens to people. But there is a way to even make it, I call it Secure Pro or Secure Plus, to enhance it. And I use it all the time. And it's related to those simis. I love saying thank you. I say thank you maybe 20 times a day to my, like, thank you for putting away the dishes. Thank you for making the bed. So, like, the most, like, seemingly insignificant actions that other people are doing in our day-to-day lives. I thank you for taking the dog out. I say thank you all the time because it's acknowledging the other person and the stuff that they're doing for you. And it really feels like it really makes a big difference. So you can, I call it the, relationship miles program. You can create a relationship miles program where you get miles like on an airplane by doing these things.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. And again, another misconception is that saying thank you won't help my relationship. But if you actually do it 20 times a day and multiply it by 30 days a month, it's just plenty of miles to fly with.
Yeah, and who doesn't like? And not only in my relationship, I say thank you all the time now to other. I actually learned it from my mom, and when she was both my parents are deceased. When she was sick and she was in the hospital, she thanked everyone all the time, and I could see how the nurses and doctors gravitate towards her and give her better care, but just like acknowledging them. And so, I mean, it doesn't cost anything to say thank you. Why not do it?
No. Exactly. One more area I want to dive into with you is the AI. and the things that is ahead of us, and it's becoming part of our lives. How does it? What's your take on it in the sense of secure and the attachment styles?
Right. So I think I go into that a little bit in the last part of the book, which I hardly ever get a chance to talk about, but actually it's one of my favorite parts. I talk there about the hidden sparks of talent and the secure priming therapy, and even there's a thing there about how to fight better from an attachment perspective. And one of the things that I talk about there is how to use AI as a way to help you, like as a secure companion. And what I mean by that, you know how you described earlier on how sometimes we get ahead of ourselves and we can't stop thinking, we get very upset about something, and how to cut the loop. So one of the ways in secure priming therapy to cut the loop is through, and there's so much research about how, again, the attachment logic, how to use other people to regulate our emotions, like the secure baby does when the mother hugs them, they calm down right away. So it's to learn to reach out to secure people in our lives in real time so they can give us a secure perspective on what's going on. And I give an example in the book about like even a patient, like I let patients text me in real time and it was like, my wife, she's ignoring me, like that I'm so like that, I get really upset, that bitch, blah, blah, blah. And then I like texting and I'll say, she just gets that way when she's upset. She doesn't mean to hurt you. This is sort of like she's ignoring you and that's painful, but she's just clamming down and she doesn't know how to reach out to you. So I text this all back, and that's a form of secure priming. And then he's able to say, yeah, you're right. We both have our own struggles. We have kids that are not easy and it's hard, and she has her own challenges. So he gains a secure perspective, and then he can engage with her in a much better way. And there's that example is in the last part of the book. And so sometimes I'm not like if a patient texts me at midnight, I'd probably be sleeping, so I won't be able to answer. But you can train and actually I'm now training an AI, specific AI in that whole secure ideas. But you can even talk to an AI and tell them, please help me come up with a more, I give different prompts in the book of how you can give me their point of view, help me see it from their place. How can I actually be more conciliatory? Help me be less upset about this. Obviously, if it knows the secure background, it will actually give you better answers. But even here, it can give you good answers. But it's also good to have others, real secure people in your life.
Yes.
But sometimes it can actually really help a lot. And I invite people, because let's be real, we all talk to AI. I mean, many of us do. And so a lot of my patients do. So instead of ignoring it, I've invited people to bring in the conversations with AI, and we work together. It's almost become it's another entity that has input, because whether I want to or not, it's already happening. So I might as well be aware of what's happening, and we can work together as a team, me and the patient, to utilize AI in a way that's actually helpful and not harmful.
Yeah. Do you think our profession is going to be is prone to being extinct with the AI and all the
I think,
things that
are
we
we
get
all
from
going
them?
to be extinct? Maybe I don't
Yeah.
know what's going to happen. So who knows? I think from what I'm seeing, I think who knows what's going to happen. But from where things are now, at least, we're using it as a tool to enhance the therapeutic process. I have some patients that it's really made a big difference, how utilizing it, because it really creates people. When you do cognitive behavioral therapy and you give people homework, they don't like to do the homework, but people like talking to do AI. So if you can utilize it as a form of ongoing extending the treatment, then it can be really beneficial. And that's why I have new training for therapists in the secure priming therapy. And so I'm just finishing the manual, and I actually have part of the manual is also how to utilize AI in a way that can be helpful for the treatment.
That's amazing. That's amazing because, again, when the internet was brought into the world, and some of us were afraid of making the use of it for the reason of thinking that it's going to take away something. But the more we try to stay away, the less beneficial it is for us. So thank you again for showing us, therapists, us psychologists, how we can introduce this to this work of ours. Not to be afraid of it, but try to make it a helper, an assistant that can assist our patients and clients where we're not available, because we're not always available. So again, you're translating what is happening around the world into something, making the use of the things that are happening. So again, kudos to that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I think what I would do, I found it very helpful to see my, and I'm going to even I'm going to try to do like a version of that in Polish too, and put it in my website, the questionnaire. I don't know how quickly I can do it, but I'll try. Because the book now is the Polish translation exists, so I can take that and actually add it to my website, so people can take the quiz and create that topography,
Yes.
get a map of their different attachment styles, and then they can use the book to start thinking, oh, I can
Yes.
use these different. Basically, the idea is to use the secure relationships in your life to facilitate secure change within you.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a great idea. And actually, it's going to be, there's this magic thing that if you read something on psychology with your own mother's tongue, it just, cuts deeper, I guess. So having that in Polish would be just awesome. So thank you for thinking about that, anyway.
Yes, for sure. I think it's been so helpful for me, and I've seen also from Attach, my own book, how much I get emails from people around the world, how much it's really helped them. So I think I said it to I like my partner the other day, because I'm writing now also a children's book to teach them about carp, but in a picture book, like in a story, because carp is about. And I said, I'm only doing this not because I want, because I feel that I have something to say that can potentially help others the way that it helped me in my immediate surrounding. And so I'm really hoping it will, because I don't really think so much about the attachment styles. I see it as a starting point. Okay, what can I do with it? How can I use all these different tools, the CARP and the CMEs? And each attachment style has to use it differently. And that's why in each chapter, it walks you through how to use it a little bit differently. To help people become more secure, because since the years that I've written it, I see how much avoidance really suffer too, because they want to make the connection. They want to find a way to feel comfortable in a relationship, and they keep stumbling on the same stuff again and again and again. And so I offer it's actually simple solutions.
Yeah, you do. And actually, I'm the avoidant one, and it helped me. Sometimes what it's like in the couple, when you say something, it doesn't go through well, but when an expert says it, it's just, goes through. So going through that chapter about being the avoidant attachment style just helped me to explain what it's like to be me. And it's just amazing how it sort of cleared the space between us, which is just so helpful every day.
That's amazing.
So thank you.
Right,
Yeah.
because also
Yeah.
it puts it more on the biological level, and so people don't take it personally so much.
Yes.
It's just like,
Yes.
I need more space,
Yes.
but
And
also
my brain says, like, have a look.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Exactly. I know answer to the question I'm going to ask you, because your books are amazing. But when you were writing the first one, have you had this idea that it's going to be such a phenomenon?
Oh, no, definitely not. I mean, we had this running joke. I wrote it with my best friend from high school, and we always had this running joke that he's only going to sell one copy to the Library of Congress,
Yeah, yeah.
because we never really thought that anything would come out of it. And also initially at work, because I was doing neuroscience research, I was a little bit embarrassed by it. I didn't tell anyone at work that I had written this book, because I'm a serious scientist. I'm not supposed to
I
write
know.
self-help books. And I was just so I kept it under wraps, actually. I didn't tell anyone. And then it took a life of its own.
Yeah, yeah, and again, I think it's courageous actually to be a part of such a complex and serious world, and then try to translate it into something that is applicable to everyday life. So the journey that you've made with this book is just amazing. But I guess it takes courage, as you said, to actually, you know, put your foot in the other world, that it's not your everyday world. So
And I actually,
yeah.
in the last part of the book, and that actually has a lot to do with why it took me 15 years to write another one. I talk about this thing about something that I called hidden spark of talent, and it all comes from my biology research. When you sit and let's say you run an experiment, you do sequencing, and you get all the different DNA sequencing, all the different genes that exist in a certain cell in the brain, and you look at the report and you see we have so many different molecules in our body, and in each and every one, they're a little bit different. So there's huge variability that exists in all of us, and so we all know that we can all twist the tongue differently, and we all have these our little quirks that we do uniquely that other people don't. But it's the same thing psychologically, and I find that oftentimes some of the things that we think or we don't notice that much, we all have these unique abilities because of this biological diversity. And I find that oftentimes either we don't think about them that much, or we don't realize them, or even sometimes see them as impediments. And I talk about that in the last part of the book, The Hidden Spark of Talent. And I think for me, I realized that, but it took many years, because also the voices that at the time I was in a relationship with someone who told me, oh, the book is fine, but you should focus on serious scientific endeavors and like they told me
Yeah.
that. And so
Yeah.
it took me years to realize, oh, actually it's one of my hidden spark of talents is writing sort of a science, in a popular science way, and translating these ideas. And I can do this, and it's fine. And it's not only about finding a new medication and a new drug to the brain, because ideas also change the brain, no less than medications. And it's also just as important. And all of a sudden, I had this permission through the work on this secure priming therapy in the book to let my hidden spark of talent come online again and write this another book.
Yeah, and thank God you did that, because the world needs it, and the relationships need it, and actually, you also talk about comparison, and also talk about how we see each other through others' opinions. And I bet there are thousands of books that haven't been written because somebody said something and it stopped them, the authors, potential authors, from writing it. So thank you. You didn't, you didn't. Believe in that it's still, you're still an amazing scientist, an amazing psychiatrist that does all the complexity and try to do all the research and science, and still at the same time it doesn't take your worth when you do a thing like that, when you do a book, when you write a book that is easy to understand, or easier.
Yeah. It took me a while to get around to that, but but I'm glad that I did. Yeah.
Again, me and the whole world as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you would like to share with us before we say goodbye?
No, I'm just glad that you also mentioned, because there's so much in that book. I mentioned you mentioned how, like, I have a whole chapter about the comparing a collaborative brain, and how we can't help but compare ourselves to others. Our brain just does it automatically. That's how we experience the world. I think the most important thing is to understand we are very extremely social creatures. And this whole idea in this new book, Insecure, is to actually seize that and actually use it as a way to, like, in the way that the examples that I gave, how I did it, to really, so we can fulfill our full potential, so we can have a better health, better longevity, and all of these different things. So it's the stuff that I work on with patients in my practice. So I put it all in the book, so other people have a chance who can't come to see me in the session, but can actually get some of the benefits from these tools.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, part of the book is about explaining, and such a beautiful part is about how you can actually apply it, and all the ideas and tools and the helpful tips and tricks that we can use, which I was so grateful for. But also, the one thing I want to mention is that this book is is so helps to grasp the whole idea of the attachment style, because there are so many stories in it. You share so openly stories of your patients or your own stories, and our brains are wired for the stories, so it's easier for the reader to actually remember what the book was about. So thank you again for
Thank you. I
including the
appreciate you saying
stories.
that. We took like those stories. Yeah, I'm. I think I'm. My talking about hidden sparks of talent. My grandfather came from a very poor family, and it's like he actually a family. He was the son of the second wife, the two wives. And the first wife hated the second wife, so she made sure that they'll get no resources. So he didn't get a chance to go to school, and he didn't really. And he was hiding it, but he wasn't able to read and write. But he was an amazing storyteller, and he had. My father is one of 10 kids, and he had 10 kids, and each weekend, he would tell them a story, like his kids, and he would be left with a cliffhanger, and they would beg him, no, tell us what's going to happen, and he'd say, no, come next week, and for the story would go on for years, so he was like
Oh no.
talking about hidden sparks of talent and how to really find that we all have these things, like these. And who knows? I wish I had some. Who knows what the stories are about? I wish I had a recording of them or something. But I think a little bit of that sort of rubbed off to me, because I like to tell things in stories.
Yeah. And you're very good at it. I'm very, very good. And thank God there are no cliffhangers in that book, because I couldn't wait another 15 years, for the resolution of the stories that you would include here. But by the way, apart from the children's book, are there any plans for something to write about?
I have a science fiction book that's still in the drawer that I may actually. Who knows if I like? You'll see. There's but I may go back to it and revive it. So there's something about that. But and I have different ideas about helping parents more. We'll see. We'll see. Thanks for asking.
Thank you so much. And again, multi-talented science fiction, amazing thing. I wish I could see what your brain is, consists of, and how it works, and how it, applies all of the knowledge into writing stories. So I'm very, very curious about how your brain works. Amir, I have a whole list of questions I haven't asked, and a whole list of questions I did ask. So thank you so much for spending the time. I know the time
Thank
is
you.
the
It was a
only resource
pleasure.
we cannot renew. So thank you for investing this time into this conversation.
No, I really I really enjoyed it too. A great deal. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Joanna.
much. And again, for all the listeners and viewers, go get yourself a book, an audiobook, or the analog one, the old-fashioned one, which is an amazing. I still love that the format of the books, because of the smell of the paper. So if you're into that, just get yourself this copy. If you haven't read, which is hard to believe, but if you haven't read the first one, Attachment, just do yourself a favor and buy 2 books at the same time, and you're going to be equipped for life. Equipped for life. Thank you.
Thank you
Amir.
very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Cześć, nazywam się Asia Chmura i stworzyłam platformę rozwoju osobistego On My Way. Każdego miesiąca na platformie zajmujemy się innym obszarem, który w sobie rozwijamy i wzmacniamy. Są to dziesiątki wykładów, które pomogą zrozumieć siebie i świat, podcastów, które oswoją wyzwania i pomogą w trudnościach, spotkań z ekspertami i ekspertkami, które wspaniale uzupełniają aktualnie opracowywany temat, medytacji dopasowanych do aktualnego obszaru, nad którym pracujemy, artykułów, które piszę specjalnie dla Was i które są inspiracją do dalszej pracy i rozwoju, cotygodniowych zadań, które przekładają teorię w praktykę, oraz warsztatów online, które pomagają uruchomić, a potem wdrożyć zmiany. A wszystko to dostępne 24 godziny na dobę, na każdym urządzeniu, z każdego miejsca na świecie. To Ty wybierasz, jak, gdzie i w jakim tempie się rozwijasz. Nic Cię nie ominie, bo wszystkie materiały dostępne są tak długo, jak długo masz aktywny abonament. Nie czekaj, zarejestruj się już dziś i dołącz do mojej platformy. Odważ się żyć życiem, o którym marzysz.